Growing up in a Christian household is a little different than growing up in a secular household. Thoughts, actions, and media that we have and consume is usually geared towards Christian audiences with the underlying biblical messages and lessons. Not saying this is a bad thing, but some of this can result in every single thing that we have growing up being completely Christian, meaning that it can look very brainwashy to the regular person. Not being allowed to watch certain movies or TV shows or even read certain books closes off any discussion of the other side. Now, my dad and I always had pretty great discussions in talking about moral issues in the world, but it was always presented with a Christian point of view. This makes sense, considering he is a Christian. People pass down their beliefs and point of view on life to their children. I don't fault him for that. Growing up, my media consisted of VeggieTales, Disney, Wally McDougal, McGee and Me, Bible Man, and one of my favorite programs, Adventures in Odyssey. All of these had a standard format of teaching lessons, maybe minus Disney, which had some skewed results sometimes in the way of Christian morals. But Adventures in Odyssey was perhaps the thing that I consumed the most of. For those unfamiliar with the program, it's actually a radio theater drama produced by Focus on the Family, which started in 1987 and has about 800 episodes to date. I started listening in the early 90s and all the way up through probably around the mid-2000s. But I listened to a lot of the back episodes and loved pulling out my tapes and having them in the background. I never listened to them when they first aired, because I remember them coming on early and Saturday mornings, but I did have a lot of the tape albums. I specifically want to talk about the first time that I realized the media that I was listening to had a very biased and somewhat controlling way of viewing the world. A lot of Christians talk about how media shapes the way we view the world and can heavily influence us. What they forget is that their own media is geared the exact same way, except for a Christian viewpoint rather than a non-Christian viewpoint. This does not make it better, it just makes it a different form of shaping. When you surround yourself in media that is skewed only one way, it stands to reason that your viewpoint is going to match that, especially if you don't know any better. Which brings us to Adventures in Odyssey. This is a very well-produced, well-acted, excellent show that teaches really awesome morals that I think any family can enjoy. There are excellent episodes that have brought me to tears, and I have connected with a lot of the characters in it. So if you can get past the religious overtones that are in a number of episodes, there are some real gems to find in this show. They deal with a lot of heavy subjects, including death and even the questioning of an afterlife. But there are also bad episodes. And the one I'd like to showcase today is Castles and Cauldrons. It's a 2-part episode that is, well, about Dungeons and Dragons. I think you can see where this is going. This is the one that made me question the show, made me actively question my viewpoint on things. If Adventures in Odyssey had the viewpoint that D&D was bad, and I was playing D&D with my family and didn't see a problem, what else were they wrong about? Let's start it out. I'll let the main character of the show, Mr. Whitaker, introduce it for you.
Discovering new and exciting things is what we do best here on our side of the radio. So why don't you come along for today's Adventures in Odyssey?
So that's Adventures in Odyssey, really, in kind of a nutshell. It's basically a show where they do little adventures, and Wit is an inventor who makes things. And that is a very small part of the show, really. And there's also biblical lessons and stuff like that. So now we're going to get an introduction from Dr. James Dobson, who at the time he actually is the founder of Focus on the Family. He's not associated with Focus on the Family anymore. I'm not really sure who runs it, but Dr. Dobson is a massive name in the Christian media center. And usually people who are into Christian media and just Christian circles know who James Dobson is. So it's really interesting to see him introduce the episode here.
As kids, I want to take a moment to talk to you and your parents about today's episode of Adventures in Odyssey. I'm sure that many of you have heard about the so-called fantasy role-playing games that are available in the stores these days.
By the tone of your voice, I have a feeling you're going to tell me about these so-called fantasy games, and you probably aren't going to like them.
Now, on the one hand, these games seem harmless enough. There's certainly nothing wrong with using your imagination. And if that's all these games involved, maybe I wouldn't be so concerned. But the fact is, in order to play these games properly, you usually have to use magic and mysticism, things that are clearly not Christian. And what's worse, some kids who used to be caught up in these games now say that their involvement led them into contact with demons and even Satan worship.
So Dr. Dobson brings out the heavy hitter right away. He drops the phrase demon worship, and makes a bold claim that these games aren't Christian because they use magic. He clearly makes the statement, if that's all these games were, referring to using your imagination, which infers that he doesn't think that any game of D&D can be harmless. So even if your game doesn't include a class that uses magic, it could lead to demon worship. Maybe that's not what he meant, but that's certainly what it sounds like, and it's backed up by the fact that he put out a 2-part episode on getting into satanic worship due to D&D.
It's not that we want to scare anybody. We just believe that drama is a good way to let you know about it. See, one of these days, somebody, and maybe it'll be one of your best friends, might ask you to play one of these games. And when that happens, I hope you'll think back to this special adventure and know the right thing to say.
So he says that a friend is going to come to you and ask if you want to play D&D. And he says to think back to this episode, which says that D&D leads to Satan worship, which means that your friend is to be assumed that by asking you to play D&D, he's asking you to join in on his Satan worship time. I take it back. That's exactly what the good doctor is meaning with his words. So the episode is going to include the Barkley family, specifically the brother, Jimmy, and his sister, Donna. His cousin, Len, is coming to stay with them.
I'll let you get unpacked, Len. From the size of that suitcase, it may take you a while. What do you have in that thing, anyway?
Just games and stuff. I figured Jimmy might like to play.
Do you have any Zapazoids?
Oh, I can do a lot better than Zapazoids.
Already, Len is sounding a little suspicious when the dad asks him what's in his suitcase. He just says games and stuff, and when Jimmy asks about another game series in Adventures in Odyssey called Zapazoids, he says he can do better than that.
Have you ever heard of Castles and Cauldrons?
It sounds familiar.
Here, look at this book. It tells you about it.
Castles and Cauldrons. A role-playing fantasy game.
My friends and I play all the time. See, you become a character, and once you prove yourself worthy, you get certain powers.
Powers?
Yeah, you'll see.
Len isn't too far off. You become a character and you gain skills. I wouldn't necessarily call them powers, but it's another way of looking at it. So far, so good.
So what's all this other junk?
Our equipment to play. Swords and belts and other things we'll need.
Whoa, hold up. This sounds like LARPing. Dr. Dobson, you did research this before putting out this episode, right? LARPing is live action role-playing, not role-playing. LARPing isn't even something that I've done, and I really don't have an interest in doing. More power to you if you want to, but I'm a guy who likes to stay at a table and let my imagination do the visuals, rather than run around and get sweaty in the woods.
We have to give you a name.
What's wrong with Jimmy?
Well, nothing, but you're not Jimmy. You're going to become somebody else.
You mean I have to make something up?
No, I have to give you a name. That's how it works, because I'm the one bringing you into the game.
Oh, he's one of those DMs. You know, the ones that give you a pre-made character because it fits their world better. First of all, you are not the character. The character is the character. I don't go to a D&D game and request to be called anyone other than Martin when out of character. There's a line between in character and out of character, and you don't merge them together. That's what's called bleed. Sometimes people's bleed is really heavy, and they don't know the difference between their character and themselves. But we'll discuss that a little bit later.
I'm Luther the Magician, and you will be John Dell the Apprentice.
John Dell the Apprentice. That's okay, I guess.
It better be. You don't have a lot of choice.
I don't?
Nope.
So Jimmy gets no choice in his character creation process. This isn't role-playing. This is conforming to the wishes of a railroading DM.
Some things you can't choose or control.
Yeah? Like what?
I told you, everything will be clear in time.
The amount of suspicious behavior they put on Len is a little overboard. So we skip ahead a bit now, where Len and Jimmy are both in the woods.
You've got to start taking this seriously or you're out.
I am taking it seriously. I just couldn't find you.
You're not taking it seriously or you wouldn't be calling me by my other name.
Huh?
Len is putting a lot of expectations on a kid who's never role-played before.
At this moment, we're deep in the woods of air, surrounded by the black monks of Benthrid.
This is LARPing. There are no dice, no stats, nothing to indicate that there are rules.
What did you hear?
Two plastic swords hitting each other?
Yeah, that's LARPing.
And again, John Dell, listen!
Something's happening!
Jimmy is immediately into this weird hallucination that I can maybe see as imagination, but it's really hard to tell where the episode is coming from here. Is Jimmy actually hearing two swords bang together through the satanic power of the game, or is this his imagination? He says after that it seems so real, so it's really hard to tell.
Now we have to offer our victory incantation, which will lock the black monks into the pit of despair forever.
A victory incantation. What's
Incantation. Just kneel down here next to me and repeat what I say.
I don't know about kneeling.
But you have to kneel. It's the only way to say the incantation. It's in the book.
Yeah, but kneeling makes it like a prayer, doesn't it?
It's not a prayer. It's just an incantation. Come here.
Lynn then goes into a victory incantation, and Jimmy is against doing this. Now, this is where consent comes into play. Lynn needs to realize that Jimmy isn't comfortable with this and needs to stop it because clearly Jimmy is upset. But because Lynn is an asshole, he convinces Jimmy to do it. We then cut to Whit. As a bit of background for this character, he runs an ice cream shop in town called Whit's End. It's the best name, honestly. And think of it as like a Chuck E. Cheese for Christians. There's a lot of other stuff that Whit has done, but no need to get into it here. I'll probably review a few good episodes of the series after this for fair representation, as Castles and Cauldrons is the very bottom of the barrel, and I would count as one of the worst episodes ever created by the team. So they imply that Whit is a Jedi. No, I'm serious. He senses a disturbance in the Force. Just listen. The one speaking to him is his assistant in the shop named Connie.
I was putting these glasses away and I suddenly felt bad.
Huh?
Almost as if something terrible is about to happen.
Really? That's spooky.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it. That's the scene with Whit. He senses an evil disturbance. Back to Lynn and Jimmy.
Hacking at the branches with your little plastic swords, huh? Hey, these are cute.
They're not cute, Dad. We vanquished...
Did you have swords like that when you were growing up, Uncle George?
Lynn consistently interrupts Jimmy's dad, George, when he tries to talk about the game, which Lynn says you aren't supposed to talk about with your parents.
What's the big idea?
What?
You kept cutting me off.
You were going to tell your dad about the game, right?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to. It's our game.
Yeah, so what?
So we shouldn't talk about it right now.
Why not?
Because the book says. See, adults don't understand this stuff. Something happens to their brain cells when they get older. They get fussy and keep kids from playing games.
Adults play D&D.
For now, it's our game. Understand?
There's also a very disturbing overtone to this. It's very manipulative and almost abusive on Lynn's part to have a secret with Jimmy. Lynn is an older cousin, and by presenting the fact that Jimmy needs to keep their quote-unquote games a secret, well, it makes me wonder what else Lynn might want Jimmy to keep a secret about. I'm not saying that's what's going on, but I did want to touch on the fact that this is a thing that happens with family members. Abuse isn't usually reported to family members when it's done by other family members, mainly because the child thinks it's normal, or the other family member says that it's their secret, and to not tell because they'll get in trouble. So there's a lot of disturbing overtones to that entire interaction with Jimmy.
I wonder if a storm's coming in.
I hope so. I like storms.
Lynn likes storms, of course you do.
I like candles. I like the shadows they make.
Of course you like the shadows that candles make. What the hell is that even? Who likes the shadows that candles make? Lynn is just a weird kid, I think, even without D&D. The problem here is that this could have been a better episode when going over the issue when you start to lose the line between fantasy and reality. That is a much better lesson. Rather than saying D&D is evil and leads to this sort of stuff, you can easily go over the loss of reality in games. This is actually an important thing. People lose themselves in games and fictions because they don't want to face reality. This is a good subject that could have gone over well in this format. It's just really quite a shame that it's wasted on the D&D is evil subject. Like I said before, bleed is pretty heavy with a lot of people. And once you start to have issues with relationships with people in real life because of your D&D game, that's when your bleed is basically your fiction and reality has merged together. It's time to take a break.
All right, you guys, wake up. I want to know who did this.
Jimmy wakes up to Donna saying that her doll was destroyed. The cat is blamed, and Donna is suspicious of Lynn and Jimmy. Later on, it's implied that Lynn used his powers to manipulate the cat into tearing the doll apart. It's never really specified. And that's where the first part ends. I do enjoy the little nostalgic turn over the tape outro, I'll admit it.
The only way to know for sure is turn over the tape.
Part 2 starts out with the same warning as Part 1. Jimmy is uncomfortable with the game. Lynn needs to stop asking him. Jimmy needs to stop playing if he's uncomfortable. Jimmy is super whiny and terrible sounding. Side note, the actor that played Jimmy actually goes through puberty in the show. They actually wrote an episode around his voice dropping, which I thought was kind of nice, and that meant they could keep the actor and character on, even when he was older. So Lynn and Jimmy are going to be sleeping in the woods tonight. And then Whit is going on about the oppression of the spirit. What does that mean? Well, I'll let Whit explain.
Well, the best way I can describe it is it's like moving close to a very hot oven. You can't see the heat, but as you get closer and closer, you can feel it bristling against your skin. Then the heat becomes oppressive. Makes it hard to breathe.
That sounds pretty weird.
Oh, I know.
I'm with Connie. It sounds weird. Donna accuses Jimmy and Lynn of stealing her doll outright then, and we transition with a nice creepy soundtrack.
Oh, nothing like a little family spat.
You're getting on my nerves. I don't care what they say. They're up to something.
Donna, why don't you tell me about your dolls?
Donna makes me really mad when she acts like that.
Besides, Mr. Whitaker gives me the creeps.
Lynn isn't interested in Whit's end, and even says that Whit gives him the creeps. He says that Whit would be an interferer of the game, and, well, he's not wrong there. Whit isn't even big on allowing video games. Which is a little hypocritical considering the man invented a virtual reality machine called the Imagination Station that allows you to travel anywhere in time as long as the program exists. You can see how this would be helpful when relaying Bible stories, and there are a number of Adventures in Odyssey episodes that revolve around the Imagination Station. It's actually really cool. But on to the story. Lynn says that when they camp out, they're going to call on Shalman. The implications there, that they're going to be basically calling forth a demon, but it's never specifically outright said.
There are more important ways to use magic. Shalman will show us.
Shaman? What's a shaman?
He's the one who comes to help the game players. He helps keep castles and cauldrons alive. And he'll break us out of the spell of the Wizards of Kith.
Later on, Jimmy's dad asks him about Lynn and how he's doing, and also reveals the real reason why Lynn is there. Lynn started hanging out around a group of friends, and Jimmy states, well, they've only been playing, and Jimmy's dad trusts him. Back over to Whit and Connie. For some reason, in the small interaction he's had with Lynn and Jimmy, Whit just automatically assumes they've been dabbling in the role-playing fantasy games. I love the way they say it, too, like it's some weird foreign word they aren't sure of the pronunciation of.
See, I remembered reading about some of the changes that happen in people, kids especially, who get involved in what they call role-playing fantasy games.
What?
To his credit, Whit says that some of the games may be harmless, but then clarifies that most of them aren't. The issue here is that this is really none of Whit's business. It's not his job to police what other parents let their children do. Now, if he thinks that Lynn and Jimmy are summoning demons, then I can see why he's interested in going over to the Barkley house. But I really do feel that this is Whit just being really very nosy.
There are evil spiritual forces at work in this world, Connie, and often we don't realize the doors we're opening to let them loose in our lives.
This is scaring me, Whit.
I'm glad.
It's not that we want to scare anybody.
Then the episode goes very much into the deep end. Lynn reveals that he did take Donna's doll, what he calls the symbol of human weakness. I have no idea why. That he needs it to summon Shalman so they can get rid of the spell that was cast on them by the bad guys in the D&D game.
What are you gonna do with it?
It's our symbol of human weakness. Only in weakness can the power of Shalman be known.
Once again, we have Jimmy not wanting to play the game and Lynn forcing him into it, even to the point where he wants to cut Jimmy's thumb for blood or whatever for the ritual. Again, the implications of this is disturbing slightly, but we are spared from anything bad happening by Whit and George barging in.
What is all this? Castles and Cauldrons book?
That's mine. Leave it alone.
A doll?
Isn't that Donna's doll?
A board of talisman?
What is going on here, Jimmy?
What are you doing? That's mine.
I'm going to take care of this board first.
Hey, that's mine.
Whit then becomes very angry and actually breaks Lynn's board. This is a bit much. Whether or not you think someone should be doing something doesn't give you the right to destroy their property. The board is Lynn's, and rather than break it, could easily have been taken away. Whit says that he's going to take care of Lynn's stuff, implying that he's probably going to trash it, and later on outright says that he destroys the items when asked by Jimmy what happened to them. This is not Whit's place to do this. Lynn or Lynn's parents bought him the items. It should be up to them whether or not it is destroyed. We then jump ahead in time. Lynn is back with his parents, and Jimmy is sitting with Whit. George says that Lynn is getting counseling from his pastor who knows about role-playing games.
He's getting counseling from a pastor who knows about this kind of thing.
Good.
Whole family's working toward a change. It won't be easy, though.
This makes me concerned for Lynn. To be honest, he clearly has issues other than D&D going on. He has a distinct lack of ability to separate fiction from reality, as proven by the fact that he continued to force Jimmy into playing the game even when the poor kid didn't want to, and felt creeped out by the whole thing. Implications of the pastor counseling Lynn means that he's probably getting a lot of doctrine shoved at him, rather than a certified counselor seeing what the underlying issue is. So the episode ends on a little tacked-on message about Jesus being the master of all things.
Our only guard against evil and all the fear and bad feelings it brings is the Lord himself.
Now, I have no issue with people believing what they want, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. You can have that comfort. But I want to show both sides that episodes like this harm the message. And I also want to show that growing up with this type of media, you start to gain a skewed view of the world. I'm also saying that not just Christians do it. This is a nature of media and entertainment in general. You're going to get someone's viewpoint, and whether or not you believe it is up to you. Just remember to question things. I think I'll be going over another 2-parter from Adventures in Odyssey if anyone else is interested in more of these. Again, this is not a good representation of the show, and I'd like to go over a few of my favorite episodes I had growing up to show off the range that the show has. So, thanks for watching.